Accounts payable invoice entry. We're going to start off by going into accounts payable. Then we're going to go into transaction entry. There are two methods to enter AP transactions into the system. You can use the direct entry where you key in an invoice at a time and keep keying invoices in, or you can key in via batch where you set the batch totals. We're going to do both as an example. First, I'm going to start off with the direct entry. Once we click on the button, we're going to go in and enter our corporation, and then we're going to enter our store. Now we're going to actually go down to the vendor. To find your vendor, there's a couple methods. You can go directly into your drop down, or you can key the first few letters of the vendor itself and then hit the drop down. You can also use an F4 there as opposed to hitting the little drop down. Once you found the vendor, you can double click on the vendor, and then the vendor is displayed. You then key in the invoice, and using tab to the next field, you key in the delivery date, and then you key in the amount of the invoice. It defaults to I for invoice, so in this case we're going to leave it as an invoice, but you can see there's the credit. We'll do one of those next. All the information below the line here is optional. We're going to go ahead and hit enter. Let me change the year there. It then brings us to the distribution screen, and we can see here that Nabisco was authorized only for one account, so that account is displayed, which is grocery purchases. The cost is automatically displayed in the cost field. We're then prompted to enter the retail of that invoice. So we key the invoice in. You can see it then displays the gross profit percentage, and then we can just press enter to accept that invoice. If we have another invoice for Nabisco, we can use the previous vendor prompt on the left, then key in the invoice number, key in the date, and the amount. So there's an example of our system allowing only one invoice number to be used once for each vendor. So it's telling me here that this invoice number 1234 has already been used and therefore is a duplicate and not be entered into the system. So I'm going to go ahead and just change that invoice to give you an example, and we'll change the amount. I'm now going to change this to an actual credit memo, and again pressing enter. Again, it automatically fills in the information based on the authorized accounts in the table. I then go and key in the retail, press enter, and I'm done. Let me show you an example of multiple distribution lines. So again, I'll key in the first few letters of the vendor. This time I'll press F4 on the keyboard. It does the same thing, brings up my vendor list. I'll go ahead and double click on Frito-Lay. Key in the invoice number, key in the date, key in the amount, and you'll notice now I have two lines of distribution. So again, it's looking to the vendor file, to the authorized account table, to determine what accounts actually display here. So in this case, we'll say that it's evenly divided amongst the two departments. So I can go using my tab key right down to the second line. I press enter. Notice in this case I did not key in retail, so the system will automatically use the departmental default for those retails and record the retail to get your going in gross. So again, I can go ahead and press enter, and it brings me on to the next screen. So that's an example of direct entry. So those invoices are entered into the system but not posted, as displayed down here at the bottom. So if I go up and go back, and then if I want to physically post those invoices, I can come into entries by creation date. It will show the invoices that I've entered. I can then come over here and do a submit post to post these transactions. And then I click OK. If I did a quick refresh up at the top, we can see those invoices have gone away. If I use the toggle to the left-hand side here, you can see it takes us to our aired screen to see if any of those invoices are aired. If I hit toggle again, it takes me to the posted screen that shows that those 4 invoices have been posted. So that's the direct entry method. Now we'll go ahead and use the batch entry for AP invoices. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the enter batch by user. Go ahead and key in the corporation, and now I'm going to add a new batch. So you give the batch a description, then you tell the number of invoices that you're going to enter and the total amount of those invoices. and press enter, and the batch will be created. It then feeds you right back into the identical screen of keying invoices into the system. So again, I'll enter the store. This time I'll hit the drop down first just to show you how you can do it either way. Type in the first few letters of the vendor, double click on the vendor, key in the invoice number, key in the invoice date, key in the amount. Again, this is an invoice. Go ahead and press enter. Again, it displays the accounts from the vendor table. Key in the retail and press enter. Now in the batch mode, you'll notice there's some information down the bottom that wasn't in the direct entry screen. What it's doing is keeping track of the control entries that I entered for the batch and the actual entries that I entered into the system. So you can see that it's expecting one more invoice in the amount of $25. So again, if I come up and hit the drop down and go find my invoice or my vendor, double click, key in the invoice number, key in the date, key in the amount, and then in this case, let's say that this entire Frito-Lay invoice was produce only, so I will leave the grocery blank. Just key in the produce amount and then key in the retail, and now hit enter to balance the entry, and now I can go ahead and hit back. So in this case, there's my batch. If I wanted to go in and make a correction to the batch before I posted it, I could highlight the batch, click on the GL Entries button, and there's the two invoices. I could then highlight an invoice and click Edit to change it. So for example, it's using the defaults in the vendors here for the due dates. So for some reason I wanted to get more than the 21 days here for the due date itself, I could come in here and make a change. And that's changed the due date of the invoice. I could also come in here and edit, and I can make some other changes down below in the optional field. I can hold this invoice so it will not be paid, or I can check the box that says pay this invoice on a separate check. I could also change the amount here as well. If I press enter, it accepts the information, and I'm back at the details of the batch. So if I'm satisfied with all the batch details, I can use the back button, and now I can highlight the batch itself, and then I can post the batch. So now we can see that batch is posted successfully. Just like on the previous method, I'm going to go ahead and toggle. It brings me to my errored batches, which you see is none. If I toggle again, it lists all the batches that I've done, so it's amongst these posted batches. I'm going to toggle back. There's also the submit post over here. The difference between the two post lines is you highlight the batch and click on the post to post a single batch. If you use the submit off to the left, it will post all the batches that are opened. So back to the menu, and that is AP invoice entry.